When I think about Leeway and its process, I see them as pioneers.
Philanthropy is designed to keep people out. Leeway is designed to bring people in.
Sometimes I feel like artists don't get local love. Leeway grants are local, they're for local artists. I feel like I'm part of a community.
The culture of being around Leeway. There's this radical hospitality.
An ecosystem that's different creative mediums, different neighborhoods, different racial and ethnic groups, different generations. A sort of rare place that has so much of Philadelphia be part of it. So many people whose work is just so world-changing. Leeway invited people that had gotten the Art and Change grant and that they were in relationship with and sort of were like, we see you, you're at a phase of your development as an artist where we feel like it would be worth it to apply for the Transformation Award. I don't think I would have applied for it if somebody hadn't said like, hey, no, you could do this.
The Art and Change grant that I won in 2008, it affirmed that I could be an artist, that somebody was willing to invest money. And more recently, the Transformation Award catapulted me.
By receiving the support from Leeway, it became the help that I needed to then build. 5 years later, I was able to receive also support from the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation as Artists and Activists Fellowship. I was able to secure another pot of funding through the community fund, through the Philadelphia Foundation, and also support from the Scattergood Foundation.
The application process was really deep and really complex. A, it forced me to take a lot of time on it, and B, it forced me to think about parts of my life that I had not thought about in a really, really, really long time, possibly since I lived them. I have to say, it actually changed the way that I write grants.
In a standard, art grant, you're talking about your aesthetic, what your influences are, what are you trying to explore in your work. All of those things are important, but what's missing is where does all of this come from? It's not just about product. Our process is interconnected with our own experiences.
If you work in philanthropy, you become handsomer, funnier, more magnetic than you've ever been in your life. The notion of doing philanthropy, having let go and created ways of letting go of that type of power and that type of monopoly on resources is such a more honest way of being, and it's so demanding, right? Because it demands that you actually have honest and challenging relationships with people and your peers and with the artists in your community.
They engage you in different ways. I've served on a review panel for Art and Change grant.
Being on the panel, it's almost like reading different languages. Just what are the frameworks that people are bringing? How do I read each person in their own voice? How do I do that with an open heart, with some principles?
Having been on the other side of it, I really had an opportunity to think about how I wanted to contribute and how I wanted to think about, quite frankly, the power that I had in that moment to determine whether or not somebody was going to get a grant for the work that they were trying to do.
I love that they commission people who are artists to engage with the review panel process for people who are artists. Having that was helpful because when you're writing grants, you're most likely gonna continue that process. You're not just writing a one-time grant or for a one-time opportunity. If you're an artist, you're gonna be continuing this process for a while. So that feedback was really helpful for me. Even the rejections, was really helpful.
What I've learned from Leeway is a way of decentering whiteness in philanthropic practice. In this country, the majority of wealth is held by white people. Leeway is a foundation where there was a shift from the family that held the wealth towards a more equitable distribution and relationship with community.
What's great about the evolution of Leeway is that they've always tried to figure out what's at the margins now and how do we lift up those voices, or how do we broaden the platform so that other folks can stand on that.
We've had this wonderful moment in philanthropy in the past year in the context of mounting inequality and injustice, of philanthropy being forced to take stock of the practices, the history, where the money comes from, how we deploy it, and all those things. So there's been a little bit of a moment of clarity, but I think Leeway's moment of clarity happened a long time ago. Leeway has a footprint that is significantly bigger than its budget. Denise specifically is seen as a leader in the national philanthropic scene because the values that many of us are trying to sort of wrestle with how to implement, she's already been doing it.
Can you imagine what is like if Leeway didn't exist for 25 years? The amount of resource that has filtered into the lives of the artists, the people that are working with the artists, getting paid by the artists. Such a cultural economy through 25 years of grants.
In a way, Leeway is part of lots of different diaspora and maroon communities. How do you imagine, how do you make change? How do you mix the poetry and the action?